Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Charmed. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, we get introduced right off the bat to our new Charmed one, Kayla, which I think is so interesting, which we later on find out her name is Michaela. Which, okay, so that kind of, because obviously the big question going into the season is like, all right, so how are they going to handle this whole Charm situation? I mean, I love, even Mel makes a joke of like, oh, do we have another sister out there? I was like, yeah, that's the kind of thing of like, what is going to be the connection? Maybe it seems like they might be leaning in that direction, but I'm surprised if that is the case. I mean, you already went to the whole like, oh, we had a secret sister. It's like, oh, we had another secret sister. At the very least, it seems like she could be related. They're thinking on their mom's side of things, but it's like maybe she's not like a sibling, not like a secret sibling, but maybe she's like family, like some familial connection on her mom's side of things. Who knows? But like I said, to my recollection with the original Charmed series, and it's been years since I've seen it, if I remember correctly, because I think it's interesting, it just opens up with Kayla, because I want to say the original series, when it came to Paige's first episode, opened up with Piper, because I think Piper was talking to her mom, because it's like, right, we want to see Prue, because that's the difference between the original show and this show. Once again, there are extenuating circumstances with the whole Prue thing in comparison to the whole Macy thing. Granted, yes, there were outside elements that led to it, but how the shows handled it was very different, because obviously the whole Prue thing was super off-screen. At least Mel and Maggie had an on-screen goodbye with Macy. They were able to like have that final hurrah together inside of her head, whereas obviously like maybe there was some off-screen stuff, but like obviously on-screen Phoebe and Piper never got to say goodbye to Prue. So that was that whole thing. Once again, it's for extenuating circumstances on the outside production-wise for the show, but still. So it's interesting. So that's where the original show started with the Paige stuff, if I remember correctly. So for them to start off with Kayla, immediately getting introduced to her, know that she's really into art, she's really good as a mechanic, but kind of stuck between her two passions. But also, like, we also find out she's a survivor of cancer. Like, Jesus, that sucks ass. I mean, obviously surviving is a great thing, but just like people get, that's just always like, cancer's always like the rawest of raw deals. It's like, that sucks, because it's just like, yeah, you got cancer. It's like, what the hell? Luckily, she's in like 5 years of remission, but you're like, that's sadly going to like come up at some point or something. I don't know, man. And she's basically been having dreams about the others for the past 6 months. So that's why I'm even trying to, even comparing the original, I'm like, did Paige ever dream about Phoebe and Piper? I don't remember if there was any like connection like that. And I find it so fascinating that was a one-way street, because Mel and Maggie never dreamed about her, so for her to have been able to like manifest that out there in the universe. Also, part of me wonders, like, I was about to say, like, well, we find out later on what her power is. It's a manifestation ability. She draws stuff and it comes to life. And I was like, oh, that's a pretty, I wouldn't have, because I was so curious, like, what was her power going to be? I didn't expect that. Never would have guessed that. Because I was trying to think for a second, I was like, what other character has that similar power? And I was like, oh, first person that came to my mind was Sai from Naruto. But other than that, of a similar ilk would be like Amaterasu from Okami. So I was like, oh, that's just so interesting. An ability like that. But I was thinking like maybe because she drew Mel and Maggie that she kind of inadvertently manifested it. But that's the thing, like, why were they reunited after 6 months? But then when you really get into it in the episode, even Mel and Maggie talk about it. They're like, the fact is they found her now just when they were kind of on the verge of breaking up, because obviously how everyone handled like Macy's death, it's hit everyone hard. We see Harry just being like, yeah, like, oh, the Guardian doesn't know all that. I mean, isn't all knowing, because we wouldn't be sitting here for the next 6 months looking for the next Charmed one if it was really that easy. And then like Mel is like, we found out about her and Ruby, which is heartbreaking, because we know in the future where Mel died, it seemed like her and Ruby were still because at the time they were still together, but obviously the future changed. But I think it's just a thing of the reason why it didn't work out is because I think it's just Mel was like, that's her way of like, she bottled a lot of that up. Because I think out of anyone, I mean, it makes sense. Maggie being the empath, she always wears her heart on her sleeve. Mel always kind of bottles stuff up a little bit more, you know. It's, I think growing up, especially because, like, you know, when it came to, like, her, you know, technically being the oldest, like, Macy ended up being, like, the oldest, but, like, you know, amongst them growing up, it was her. So I think, like, that was just always, like, Mel's defense mechanism. And I think that led to her and Ruby breaking up. Maybe they'll get back together. That might have been, like, an off-screen thing of, like, oh, it's just because maybe the actress who's playing Ruby isn't coming back, or maybe she will. And it's just in the confines of the story of, like, they will eventually find their way back to each other. But it does seem like Mel's just kind of, like, hooking up with people and just kind of hitting it and quitting it just because it's like, yeah, she just, like, she enjoys the companionship, but it's like, I don't want anything serious. It's just, I don't want to be tied down to something. I don't want to get too connected. You know, it could, you know, her defense mechanism of, like, right, a sister she went her entire life never knowing about and only got 3 to 4 years with just to lose her. It's a raw deal. But also Maggie, like, her and Jordan, like, jump into the deep end of, like, crime fighting, which I love that Mel says, like, oh yeah, you guys doing the whole Batgirl and Robin thing, which is, like, very apt description considering, like, yeah, Batgirl and Robin, specifically Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson, do, like, apparently get together from time to time. I wasn't always aware of that being a thing, but obviously it does happen, interestingly enough. But I found it so interesting. It's like, oh yeah, that's actually a really good description in that regard of, like, of them doing their vigilante crime fighting. And because I think that's such a heartbreaking aspect to the episodes. Like I said, they are both handling it in their own way. So it's like they're almost strangers in the same house. Like, you know, like, it's like losing a limb for them. It's like they lost a part of themselves when Macy died. And it's like, how do they, like, it, you know, because it's ironic. It's like, we're back to us again. Like, for a long time, it's like, yeah, it was just us. But I think Macy brought something, like, not only, like, did Mel and Maggie get closer because of Macy's presence, they also had a third person. It's like, right, like, there was so much discovery, so much amazingness with having a third sister. And now having that lost limb, you know, it's just like, right, you have that phantom limb syndrome of, like, it will never be the same without that sibling. You know, it's like, right, what kind of brought them even closer together is now gone. And it leaves a void in more ways than one. And so they're both kind of, like, doing their own thing. It's just like, oh, hey, see you. Yeah. Like, they're just passing each other by in the house to the point Maggie was like, oh, I'm gonna move out. And it's like, wait, what? You know, and Mel pushed back a little bit, but then gave in. And that's what upset Maggie the most. It's like, she didn't even fight for me to stay here. It's like, you know, she's like, I needed things to change, but she was hoping, like, that would incite Mel to do something. But Mel just kind of was like, okay, you know, you're right, maybe we do need to make a change. It's like, you didn't even fight for us either, you know? But the cosmos being what it is ended up drawing them together. I'm wondering, does this have something to do with, I wonder, is it just, like, because she was on the verge of becoming a witch in her own regard, or what? Because we also have to deal with, like, Kayla was getting headaches, and she didn't go to the doctors, because understandable, like, people get a little weird about it. Not weird, but I can understand the fear, like, I don't want to go to the doctors, because the moment I go to a doctor, whatever it is that's affecting me is going to become real, which, yes, I can understand that fear of, like, especially in her case, it's like, I don't want to find out I'm sick again, because I'd rather not know, because she's very free-spirited in regard of, hey, like, I don't know what's left of this life of mine, so I'm just going to live it the fullest. I'm going to do what I want to. Like, you know, it's like, you know, sadly, that kind of opens your eyes to things when you're kind of given a timetable, when you're given a terminal illness type of thing. So luckily she's in remission, but it is still the thing. I think she's always waiting for the other shoe to drop of, like, I could always get sick again. Every day is in itself a blessing, so... Which that's going to be, they don't know that about Kayla yet. And that's going to be complicated because it's like, cool. Oh, wait, we get a sister, we got a new person brought into our lives for her to be sick and potentially for that to her be stripped away from us just like Macy was. That's some BS, you know? So that's such a fascinating thing. And you also have Harry who... I love that they didn't really dive into it, but just Harry's specific words. It's like, this is the person that's supposed to replace Macy. It's like, no, she's supposed to be a new charm one. There's no talks about, like, because the fact is, he looks at it so personal. Like, she's replacing Macy. It's like, if you're going to be replacing Macy, you better be, like, top notch. Because it's also like, right, because he was looking for any excuse. He was like, I'm going to prove she's not a charm one. It's like, because in his mind, it's like, and I talked about this, like, during my watch list, when I was talking about the new season coming and everything. It is a conversation about, or maybe I talked about it during my trailer discussion. Either way, it is a conversation of, it feels like we're trying to replace Macy. It's like, oh, she died. Oh, bring in the next person. That's what it kind of feels like to Harry. So, And I love it. He's kind of recognizing Mel and Maggie being a mess, but not, it's always, it's a pot called on the kettle black. It's like it's always easier to recognize it in other people. Jordan can recognize it in all of them, and so can Josefina. Like, she's trying her best to get them all, but it's like, yeah, they're just not all on the same wavelength anymore. To the point, Jordan's like, oh yeah, there's this thing going on, and Harry's like, yeah, sure, Luke can look into it if you want. I don't care. So, he just isn't, I think he's not fulfilling his white lighter duty. I understand, the woman you're in love with, so the little time you had together as a couple, there was this will they, won't they element to it, and then like when you finally do, it's like, oh cool, that they had planned for the future and everything, became human for her, just to kind of end up losing her. So it's like, there's just, of course that's going to cut super, super deep for all of them in their own regard, so... And obviously Kayla, like, managed to find her way there just because, as they said, like, maybe it's Macy pulling the strings of fate to make this all happen, because it's like, right, we need, just when the Charmed Ones are kind of breaking apart Mel and Maggie, that there's a third person here to kind of fill that void that Macy kind of brought them closer together, kind of bringing them back together as well, reuniting the Charmed Ones. Obviously, the first attempt didn't work. Their justification is like, well, maybe it's because Kayla didn't believe in magic. She didn't believe in all this. She thought they were crazy, despite her just randomly popping up in Seattle, even though she was in Philadelphia. And it's like, wait, you guys are talking about magic? Well, you use your magic to calm me down. It's like, no, this is weird. This is crazy. Poor Josefina ended up, like, biting an apple that was brought to life from her drawing, and just for it to be like now she's, and I felt so bad when like Maggie accidentally ripped her arm when they teleported away, and it's like, yeah, I might need to fix her before she bleeds out. It's like, well, yeah, you did rip her arm off, and Maggie's like, what? And it's just like, oh, and they try to staple her arm back. I wonder when she does return to normal, does she actually still have like the scars from it or whatever, or does she have actual staples? I'm curious. It seems like the way they talk about it, her arm is a little jacked up from the process, but still. But that's such a neat ability, like being able to manifest your drawings, which is kind of scary because she does draw a lot of stuff. And so why did this stuff from her sketchbook specifically come to life? Especially, well, I guess maybe it's just her powers not, her coming into her powers and not fully understanding them, because it seems like it's only now that they're starting to manifest, because she's drawn stuff before that hasn't come to life, at least that we're aware of, not unless we find out later on, oh, some of your stuff has been coming to life for a while now, you've just been unaware of it. So, because she's done a lot of murals and stuff like that, so I could definitely see that being a thing, especially for her, because it's like, right, how much of her old life is she going to leave behind? Because she's got like her best bud, her spiritual BFF, what was it, like spiritually chosen, like BFF, like almost like the spiritual cosmos basically decided, brought me into your life to be your BFF, her friend Bryn. It's like balancing, that balanced life between the magical world and the personal lives is tricky things. Always has been, in the OG series as well as this series as well. I feel like they've hit that wall somewhat, but I feel like maybe they didn't. I feel like they didn't hit that wall nearly as hard as the OG Charmed Ones did. To be fair, it took a couple years into it before they really hit it, but these Charmed Ones have hit it somewhat too. But I don't know, I'm just curious like how Kayla handles it, because it's like, right, this is all kind of getting thrown at her at once. The Power of Three united. It was actually pretty dope just taking like the because essentially the monster that was inside a command base is essentially the negative space left over from a drawing. He's like, oh, very technical, I guess, drawing terms. I don't think I've ever heard I think I have heard the term negative space in an artistic sense before, but basically taking like the Josefina's like drawing and just like slamming it onto negative space to fill it out so that her form is complete again. So that's pretty interesting. So that worked out. And the episode almost flows a little bit, because I was like, oh, I'm wondering, is this going to be kind of similar to the Paige episode? Because like Paige's episode was like a two-parter. Like, because when she she pretty much walked away at the end. But it doesn't necessarily say like a to be continued, but like Kayla like leaves at the end. She just leaves a note behind and just kind of bounces, because it's like, yeah, this is a lot to kind of get thrown at me. Plus you find out like, oh yeah, my predecessor was their sister who died, and obviously the Charmed Ones have always been sisters, and so like trying to figure out their connection to Kayla, which Harry did some deep diving. She was adopted, being a Michaela, like maybe there's something there. they have to dive into it deeper because there's no idea, they have no idea who her mom is or who her dad is because their birth certificate was blank on that front. So that, once again, the $1 million question is how she's connected to the Charmed Ones. Other than that, the episode's also been dealing with, and I think that's going to be a big part of Jordan's story this season, is figuring his stuff out. I was almost wondering, like, do you think they're setting Jordan up to be Harry's replacement? It doesn't make up for all the, like, magical knowledge he has, but especially because Jordan kind of fills that void a little bit of the old White Lighter thing. And even when he was at that Pixie ceremony, it's like, oh, yo, I thought Harry was the only White Lighter. It's like, he is. Jordan's like, I don't know what I am. It's almost filling that void almost of like a Paige situation too. Like I was like, oh, half witch, half white lighter thing. Like granted, he's just a regular human with white lighter abilities. He can't orb, but he can heal. So it is interesting. They've almost kind of got their version of Paige. I mean, to be fair, Macy was already their version of Paige except Macy was part demon, not part white lighter. So in fact, Jada would be more the apt description because Jada was half witch, half white lighter. Was it Jade or was it just Jade? It might have just been Jade from season 1. Who I talked about is she plays oh god, most recent thing is she's played Hardison's sister in Leverage Redemption. Brianna. So regardless, tangents aside, but he went to that, Jordan went to that Pixie ceremony, and it's like, I guess because the Charmed Ones are celebrities, well, she does Josefina, who's related to their cousin, but it's like, oh, wait, oh, Macy, I'm sad, and it's just like, oh, Mel is this, and like, oh, Maggie, oh, I love her so much, I could see, like, why she likes you and stuff like that. That Pixie, she was, like, super hyperactive, and it's her sister's ceremony to get her wings, but when it was time for her time, like, to grow her wings, they were bat-like demonic wings. So the question is, why is that? Turns out she had the same coin that was in the bag with that thing, that fur ball. It's not supposed to be violent, but it was. In fact, it actually had teeth, too. I guess, apparently, demons get them as, like, snacks or whatever. So, like, okay, that's weird. But also this Pixie getting, like, bat-like wings. It's like something is contorting and twisting, I think, the natures of things for their own benefits. It turns out it's someone known as the Tallyman. And if you say, or as in her, Annie's case, write the Tallyman's name down, you die. It's a byproduct. It's part of the contract of like, no, you can never speak or write my name. My name can never be seen, heard, or spoken just because it'll break whatever contract we have. So I'm interested to find out, like, what this whole deal is. Like, oh, kind of like a deal with the devil. Like, I'll help you, but there's going to be a price to pay. So, like I said, it's like, whoever it is maybe feeds off the chaos of changing the very nature of things. And, like, maybe there's, like, some kind of magical experiment that's going on in this regard of, like, once again, making a creature that's typically docile and has no teeth vicious and having teeth, or warping a Pixie's wings to kind of corrupt. Like, it seems like, I think the season's all going to be about corruption, maybe. So that's going to be interesting to find that out. You know, how everyone finds their way forward. You know, once again, Mel and Maggie are pretty good because Maggie tore up the thing because it's like, right, things have changed. Because I think it's also the thing of talking to Kayla about Macy is probably the first time they've ever really just talked about it since it happened. You know, because both of them were just kind of like keeping themselves busy. It was their defense mechanisms, their way of dealing with things because they weren't talking. It's like a casual, like, here and there. It's like, yeah, but you're not talking like your sisters, the grieving sisters that you are. It's like, you know, as Jordan kind of described it, like grief is like this giant mountainous castle surrounded by a moat with like, what did he say, with like alligators in it or something like that. It seems like a pretty impenetrable fortress of sorts, that mountain of grief that they're going through. And it's just like, they're so, like, you know, it's like, right, they internalize so much and they're not there for each other in that time. I mean, who's to say? It's been 6 months, so maybe they kind of were there, you know, but 6 months doesn't change. Like, it's still a fresh enough wound that, like, that's never going to go away. They had lost, I mean, it's already bad enough. It's like, man, they lost their mom. Now they've lost, like, they can still talk to her. And the same thing to their sister. Like, they could always contact her. You know, once again, that never really came up in the original show, because it was just kind of like oh yeah, Prue, she's getting ready from like accepting, like, you know, moving on to the afterlife and stuff, and like what's next for her next phase of existence. They'll probably do the same thing with Macy. Like, they could always be like, depending on probably like how the actress Madeline like feels about it, like, you know, there'd probably always be a potential of like, hey, she comes back and kind of plays into the passing of the torch a little bit more, like, you know, as long as it's probably not like a continuous thing, like, because I'd heard, like, you know, the reason why she had left the show was because she was homesick, which, once again, like, I didn't know that was the reason why she left the show. Once again, I respect someone's decision of like, yeah, being homesick, and it's just like, right, I get it. That schedule is rough. That's like you're away from home 9+ months out of the year. Because, like, I don't know if that's always applicable to every TV show. It definitely is for CW stuff, especially because it's like, yeah, you're from a different country, then you have to spend time, you know, away from family, unless you're fortunate enough to be in a situation where your family's with you. Yeah, television's like a rough thing. Like, working on movies is still rough because you're going to be away from long periods of time, but I feel like, because the way TV shows kind of crank episodes out and stuff like that, and seasons, like, it's not that large of a break in between seasons, production-wise, so that's why I'm like, I'm going into the tangents of like the production side of things, but like I get it. So, but like I said, the window's always open for her to, like, unlike with the Prue thing, like maybe she could always come back, even if it's like a 1-episode thing of just like, hey, like being there for her sisters, letting them know that everything is okay, and even, you know, being there for Kayla when maybe she's not in the best like mind state and stuff like that, to kind of be a guiding light for her as the predecessor, you know. So. Yeah, I'm excited to have Charm back. I'm also excited to see, you know, really get to know Kayla, find out her connection to the Vera sisters. Also, you know, more about Jordan's circumstances, Harry's way of handling all this Tallyman thing. It's all very fascinating, so I'm excited to see what happens next. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.